I already told you I don't know where those guns are. If that's what you came to talk about, I ain't got much more to say. If you're trying to win my favor, Gabriel, you might start with some whiskey to wash the taste of blood from my mouth. Today on the Comic Book Report, The Sixth Gun Omnibus Volume 2 by Cullen Bunn and Brian Hurtt from Oni Press. Stick around and check it out. Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm back in the world of Cullen Bunn's The Sixth Gun. In case you missed my recent coverage of Volume 1, this is a Western horror dark fantasy series from this incredible writer, set in the years immediately following the American Civil War, and wow, it is a real treat. I really enjoyed going over Volume 1, and as I mentioned in that video, I did read all 3 of these omnibuses along with the sequel series Shadow Roads, so I do plan to release videos reviewing all of it, so I hope you stick around for the ride. Before we dive in though, just a quick thank you to Oni Press for sending this review copy in exchange for an honest review. Okay, that'll do it, let's go ahead and get started. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written primarily by Cullen Bunn and illustrated primarily by Brian Hurtt and Tyler Crook. The comics in this volume were published by Oni Press beginning in 2012. The volume itself collects The Sixth Gun, issues 18 through 35, The Sixth Gun, Days of the Dead, issues 1 through 5, and The Christmas Story. And finally, this is a standard-size trade paperback with nice glossy print paper stock, a glued binding, and a total of 584 pages. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first look at the cover for The Sixth Gun Omnibus Volume 2 from Oni Press. Just like the Volume 1, we have this beautiful ornate frame around everything, a nice black and white everywhere, and then we have a little picture window that's kind of in color here. This has some art from the collection itself. I really like this design choice. Like I said, it is across all of the prints in this format, and I just like it. There's a great uniformity here, as I mentioned in the Volume 1 review. For those interested, I will do a shot showing everything released like this, the 3 omnibuses and the Shadow Roads collection, just so you can see what they all look like together. The spine of this collection as well, I really like it. It goes for kind of more minimalist aesthetic. We have the creators, a little skull, the stylized text for The Sixth Gun, and then the publisher. Really nice though, no complaints here. I really like how crisp it all looks. On the back of the collection, we have a little bit of a blurb about what this book's all about. We have what's collected in this little set, and we have some pricing information, publication, things like that. Other than that, we have a little stylization of all these little like runes that signify, I think, the different 6 guns, if I'm not mistaken, as well as that same ornate black and white frame. No physical art from the collection on the back of the book here, but other than that, yeah, still really beautifully done here. And for all you prospective collectors out there, I wanted to give a quick look at the binding for this paperback omnibus edition. As I mentioned, it is glued. I think overall it is really well bound. The pages maybe take a little bit to lay flatter, but even reading through it, it does ease up over time. There isn't a ton of gutter loss. There's a little bit here and there, but a lot of the panel layouts have a little bit of white borders, so you don't really miss too much. There were maybe a few instances where I had to push the pages down, but no real complaints. And of course, as I mentioned a moment ago, here is my overhead shot of all 4 of the collections in this run for The Sixth Gun. We have the 3 omnibus editions, which collect all of the main Sixth Gun material, all of the main issues, the miniseries, and little special one-shots. And then after that, we do have the Shadow Roads, or the Shadow Roads Omnibus. It's a smaller collection and basically includes that, I'm going to call it a maxi series. But anyway, they're all designed very similarly here, so you get a lot of great uniformity, as I mentioned earlier. The side profile as well, just looking really sleek on the bookcase. I love what Oni Press did here. I kind of wish this run had great hardcovers as well, but for the price point for these paperbacks, it really can't be beat, and honestly, they're a really fun little collection. Okay, and with all that out of the way, we can jump into this second omnibus volume, and right away, it's similar to the first, where we have a title page, publication information page, creator breakdown page, and then we have this beautiful, ornate table of contents, again, borrowing that style we've seen on the front and back cover, where we have a nice little frame. We have the chapter numbers, which each correspond to an issue of the Sixth Gun. Everything's page numbered in that table of contents, so we have the next handful of issues, and then we also have the Days of the Dead miniseries, which is another, I think, 5-issue miniseries, and then a little Christmas story, which actually isn't in the table of contents. It's right at the end. It's very short. Like the previous collection, unfortunately, we do not have any of the covers. Instead of that, we have little chapter break pages, so you still know where the issue starts, but of course it would have been nice to see those beautiful covers. If not before each issue, then at least reserved at the back in a cover art gallery, but unfortunately, we really don't have that here, nor do we have many extras, just like the first collection. As far as what this includes, we have basically 3 more main story arcs for the Sixth Gun, followed by that mini-series. The story arcs we have are A Town Called Penance, Winter Wolves, and Ghost Dance. So we have those 3 along with the Days of the Dead mini-series. And each of those story arcs, I think, correspond to a trade paperback collection. In case you don't upgrade to these paperback omnibuses, there are still trade paperbacks you can find relatively cheaply, I believe, online. There were oversized formats for the Sixth Gun, but my knowledge of it, as they've been long out of print. Please someone correct me if I'm wrong, however. But anyway, we pick up right where we left off. The first story arc, A Town Called Penance, is really having Becky Moncrief, the owner of the Sixth Gun, our main heroine for this series. She's trying to find her sort of partner in crime, or partner in mission, Drake Sinclair, who has basically been captured or missing. She stumbles across a town called Penance and basically learn that the townspeople are sort of, I'm going to say cursed, but they basically can't leave this town. They're forced to drink this water that they now can't live without. Anyway, we find out that the town is actually kind of meant to build up sacrifices for this old order called the Knights of Solomon, which is a really sketchy organization. I know we had the Sword of Abraham, which was kind of a monastic order in the first volume. This is another kind of faction that has their own relationship with what they want to do with the Sixth Gun. Anyway, we definitely see them pop up more throughout this collection, but this first real story is Becky trying to find her way back to Drake. Drake has been kind of captured, interrogated, tortured, and the first chunk of this book is sort of the rescue mission. We also get a little bit of backstory into what's going on with Drake and how important he is to the central mythos of the Sixth Gun. We basically, as he's escaping capture, we see an old mural depicting someone who looks just like Drake as a medieval knight. There's also utterances of this idea that he's been around for a long time and he's really more attached to these guns than we might have believed. He's obviously still the holder of a good handful of them at this point, but we have kind of an ongoing and growing mythology around these guns that are quite important, and Drake seems to be smack dab at the center of it. Some of the mythos that is explored in the Sixth Gun, especially by this point in the series, is this idea that the Sixth Gun, or rather these 6 guns, have been around for some time. In fact, there were previous iterations of them. They were not always guns. At one point, they might have been swords. At one point, they might have been clubs and sticks. But these guns have kind of evolved over time and have really followed humanity. In fact, we also know that when they're all gathered together, when you break the seal and when you kind of usher in what these guns are supposed to do, you can destroy the world, but you can also remake it in whatever image you choose, and that really is the driving motivators of a lot of the villainous characters in this book, and ultimately it becomes kind of more of a motivation for these central characters. Obviously they're trying to get rid of the guns, but short of that, they're basically trying to stop the villains from making the world into a rougher image. So how exactly does Drake Sinclair have pictures of him as a knight, and what's going on there? Well, that's something we start to develop and delve more into. The next chunk of story we have in this omnibus is the Winter Wolves storyline, and I enjoyed this story. For me, this felt like a different kind of interlude in the series. We have a lot of different kind of atmospheres and environments in this series. We basically are taken in to this kind of middle space or alternate dimension, like spiritual realm that's parallel maybe to the main world they're all existing in. And it's completely covered in snow. There's these giant spirit like wolves basically, and basically this creature who they call the Wendigo, which is another kind of folkloric creature. Anyway, in this version, it seems to be this monstrous, like wolf kind of creature, animalistic kind of creature. There's different forms for it, but it captures Becky and Drake after they are liberated from the Knights of Solomon. And once they are captured, they're in the spirit world for a long time. And along the way, we get more and more about the Sixth Gun itself, the one that Becky holds. We get to see more of its powers and how it's more than just a gun that reveals visions, how you can also manipulate it in kind of strange and powerful ways. And we also, again, this is like the middle of the series here, roughly. And so by this point, we're starting to get sort of the transformation of some of these characters that are holding these guns, the way it begins to kind of skew them or corrupt their compasses in some ways. There's also some physical changes going on with Drake Sinclair. He tries to keep it under the radar, but the astute reader will have observed a couple moments where maybe parts of his skin don't look quite like they used to. So these guns are definitely starting to weigh on our heroes, and we get to see some of that gradual change and transformation. But yeah, they're stuck in this kind of spirit realm, and they're trying to find a way home. After this story arc, we have the last big one for this omnibus before the miniseries, which is the Ghost Dance story. This one's another really cool one. Basically, Becky becomes stuck in kind of a different plane of existence after using more powers from the Sixth Gun. Drake takes her to a local group of sort of spirit guides to try to guide Becky back to her normal physical state and consciousness. And along the way, she sees different visions and iterations. She gets kind of jostled through times or eras of existence. And we find out that this is her way of peeking into different worlds that were created because of the Six Guns. So we see, cavemen that had sticks, essentially, that were the Six Guns. Then we have, during that medieval era where they have the swords that are, the predecessor to the Six Guns. In that reality, we get to see Drake Sinclair as sort of a barbarian, then a knight. And so we have this idea that Drake has been around for a long, long time, regardless of what his memory appears to be. In this space, she ends up getting attacked by someone sent by Missy Hume, the general's wife. She has to do battle and try to basically survive. And at the very end of this collection, we're introduced to what is going to be kind of one of the big bads of the whole series, if not the biggest bad, which is the Grey Witch. It's sort of this monstrous looking magical woman who happens to be the mother of General Hume. So that's really where this main set of issues leaves us for the second omnibus. Obviously, we cover a ton of ground here. I'm not even touching on everything. We have a lot of great moments, not just with the characters I've mentioned, but with the secondary cast of characters. The art from Brian Hurtt is absolutely astounding as well. It has so much great visual consistency, especially when compared to the volume 1, and this really just keeps the story right on going. I didn't notice any dip in quality. In fact, by this point, it was safe to say I was absolutely hooked on this series. So after we pass issue 35 of that main Sixth Gun series, the back portion of this book largely has the miniseries The Sixth Gun Days of the Dead. This is a fun 5-issue kind of spin-off miniseries that really stars Roberto Vargas from the Sword of Abraham kind of faction that we got to meet earlier in volume 1. Anyway, that character and Jessup Sutter, who is a huge foil and kind of enemy or nemesis for Drake Sinclair. We get a lot more backstory on this character as we go as well, but this miniseries is really interesting. We have those two characters collide, and we have this story that kind of goes into this back history where they kind of try to find this magical artifact for different reasons, of course. We also have a love story for Jessup, and it ends, of course, in tragedy across these pages, but the characters it introduces are quite important, and we get to see how this is all linked to Drake Sinclair in a way. But yeah, really fun here. I don't want to go into a ton of details, but this 5-issue miniseries was very engaging. I think like the miniseries we got in the volume 1 that followed General Hume's kind of horsemen or his lieutenants, this one did a great job of finding more secondary characters in the Sixth Gun and giving so much more context, background, and real just a sense of grounding for these characters in new ways. I certainly cared about them, and I think that this is such an excellent way to use a mini-series because you get so much better kind of dimensionality for these secondary characters. And I think it definitely got me locked into both, Brother Roberto and Jessup in a way I didn't expect. I also thought that those were kind of unlikely, reluctant allies throughout this mini-series. A lot of great action here, a little bit of horror, but definitely something worth noting. I will was really happy, kind of like the volume 1 again, that they included these miniseries throughout these omnibus editions. I like that we get more than just the main run of issues because we get to pad out the world even more, so you feel like you're having a more comprehensive experience going through these omnibus books. After those 5 issues, we do have a Christmas story, which is a very, very short little story. It is a straight up an interlude, but I really liked it. It was kind of a cool, and I don't want to go all the way to festive, but it is kind of a heartwarming little entry in the midst of all the intensity we had going on in the Sixth Gun where we let off. I really enjoyed that they included this as well. I'm kind of baffled they didn't include this in the table of contents. Similar to Volume 1, also had an entry that was very small that was not included in that as well. I'm not really sure why they do that. I don't know if they consider this an extra or something, but I am happy they included it in this collection. You'll see it at the end here. It is very short, like I said. And then after that, we really just have the creator bios again, and that really is the only extra we have for this collection, and that really rounds out the Sixth Gun Omnibus Volume 2. Again, format-wise, almost identical to the Volume 1, which I love to see. It does make it so easy to just binge read this whole run if you have these great paperback omnibus editions. Like I said, for how many pages we had, I did think it was put together really well. The binding was solid, and it was a breeze to read through. One of my favorite little facets is that you have the name of the story arc in the upper right-hand portion of the header of each page. I thought that that was delightful. I like that we got page number table of contents here. Again, I mentioned Brian Hurtt's art earlier, but the art is just so strong throughout this collection. I understand that his look is a bit stylized. Maybe it is a bit cartoony in some ways, some rounded edges, but I love it, and I think it fits the world so well. I enjoy how these creators play with so many different big themes and ideas, and even just genre. Having a Western horror series in a mainstream comic book I thought was really fun. I say mainstream, I guess Oni Press is kind of an independent publisher, but this is a really trendy comic that a lot of people regard pretty highly, and I love that we have such an interesting genre at the forefront. At any rate, that has been the Sixth Gun Omnibus Volume 2 from Oni Press, and now all that's left to do is to give this collection a grade. For successfully keeping the momentum going all the way through and building on the mythos, lore, and even character dimensions for all of their main cast of characters, introducing a handful of more, each page filled to the brim with stunning art and a fun playfulness in genre, mixing Western, horror, dark fantasy, and more. For all these reasons and more, the Comic Book Report is happy to give the Sixth Gun Omnibus Volume 2 by Cullen Bunn and Brian Hurtt from Oni Press an A. This is absolutely a stellar read, and while it might not be for everyone, it definitely was within my wheelhouse. Like I've said throughout this volume and the first volume review, this was a binge-worthy series for me that I found really hard to put down. I've had so much fun reviewing it for you today, and I can't wait to review the additional volumes in this greater series and franchise. But that's just my opinion. What did you think of The Sixth Gun? Have you read it, or do you have any other notable works from Cullen Bunn that you could recommend? Let me know all of that in the comments section, or any other comic book related questions you have. A huge thank you again for Oni Press for sending it over, and thank you to all of you who've made it this far. Thanks for watching. Until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to give this video a like, that comment we talked about, and maybe check out another video or two on your way out. Thanks everyone, bye.